strength and our redeemer. Please be seated. I wonder how many of you remember a book called The Road Less Traveled. Yeah, it was pretty popular maybe 10, 15 years ago. And you may remember the sort of definition of the fundamentals of religious faith in that book, of recognizing that there is a being at the center of the world whose judgment you accept, which is other than yourself. Do you put yourself at the center of the universe, or do you put God at the center of the universe? Today we recognize what the church traditionally has called the Feast of Christ the King, also called the Reign of Christ. And it's fundamentally about that question of who do we think is ultimately our judge? Ultimately, how do we decide whether what we are doing is right or not? Are we like a 2-year-old looking only at what feels good at this moment without regard to whether it's good for me in the long run or good for other people around us? Or do we recognize that there is a measure of goodness and right living in the world that is other than ourselves? Now, the fact that you all are sitting here in church tells me that you all recognize that there is a God who is not you, and that there are standards to which you aspire in your life and your conduct, which is other than just how you feel at this very instant. And today, we hear scriptures that tell us by what measure that God judges us. And what are those measures? You know, it's not how beautiful we are. It's not how well dressed we are. It's not how successful we are. It's not how many children we have. It's not what kind of car we drive. It's in fact sort of opposite to many of the measures that the world uses to judge. It's simply how kind we are. I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. Those are the measures that Jesus tells us God judges by. Now, does that mean that God wants us to be miserable so that we can make everyone else around us happy? Again, that's a trap that our sort of late stage capitalism might suggest that this is about, you know. Because if I give, don't I have less? Well, no. That's the paradoxical thing. If you actually have tried it, which I suspect you have, you find that being kind rewards you too. Scientific studies actually show that people are happier if you give them the choice of, you give them some money and you say you have a choice of keeping this all or sharing it with someone else. The people who share it with someone else are happier. We're designed so that we get an endorphin rush for being charitable. In the last year, I have been looking at eating healthier and exercising more and generally, losing weight and all that stuff. I was surprised that part of the program was the practice of gratitude. What does that have to do with losing weight? Well, it turns out if you practice daily gratitude, and as actually part of gratitude is sharing, that it fills that hunger inside you. You can recognize when you have enough. Because is there not anything more powerful for telling your subconscious that you have enough than sharing? I have enough food that I can share. It fills that hunger. That's the secret of the UTO boxes, is it not? That sort of daily or multiple times a day of recognizing something for which you are grateful and putting a little coin in the box. It's like you're telling your subconscious, I have enough. I have something to be grateful for. God does not want you to be miserable so that other people can be happy. But God knows that you will be happier too if you are generous in sharing with others. And that other person will be happier. I remember some years ago reading an article about a bishop of the Episcopal Church who had a sabbatical. And what she did on her sabbatical was she lived as one of the homeless people who was dependent on the food, on the meals that the church gave. She came with the others to receive the free meal. And then she wrote about how she was received. Isn't that sort of what Jesus did? God came as a person, not as one who had a lot, not even as a king, even a generous king, but as one who was dependent on others. He went around from one village to another, dependent on the generosity of strangers. He walked dependent on a stranger pulling water up from a well so that he could drink. When Jesus says, when the Son of Man comes, and he will say, "Blessed are you because you fed me when I was hungry," that is not metaphorical. That's what Jesus did. And it's not just the incarnate Jesus in whom we can see Christ, but our neighbors, the people at the community meals, the high school students whose parents cannot provide for them adequately. People in prison. Each of us, at some points in our lives, are dependent on the kindness of strangers. And each of us has the ability to share. Now, Jesus' words they're difficult for me because I'm sort of a perfectionist. And so I think about all those times that I didn't share, as well as those times that I did. And I think, okay, so which am I? Am I the one who didn't share? Or am I the one that did? I think God knows that none of us are 100% one or the other. Just as part of my weight loss program was learning that it's not 100% one or the other. You know, there's going to be times that I act selfishly. Like there's times that I'm going to eat that second piece of pecan pie. What matters is how we, by our actions, vote in whatever small way for the person that we want to be. When you pledge money to the church, you are voting to be that generous person that you want to be. Each time you put a coin in the UTO box, you are voting to be that grateful person you want to be. Each time you write a check to a charity, you are voting to be that compassionate person that you want to be. And just like when you are driving, small corrections allow you to stay on the road. Those daily small votes for the direction that you want to grow, for that person that you want to be, add up. And so when we ultimately stand before our judge, we can hope that that judge will look at us and say, "Blessed are you, for you shared with the hungry. You put yourself out for the sorrowful. You were compassionate to the stranger. Welcome to my kingdom."